All right, what's up, guys? Invincible Season 3 has come to an end, and I want to give you my thoughts on this season, just this show in general, because I think it is so amazing. This season is without a doubt my favorite season so far. I think it goes 3, 1, and then 2, but they're all amazing. They're all great. And if you're not watching this show, I think you're definitely missing out, especially if you're a superhero fan, Marvel fan, even if you watch just The Boys and then you've never watched this because it's animated. I know how some people feel about, animation and all that, and we'll get into animation a little bit later, but you're missing out, man. This show is, in my opinion, better than The Boys. The character development, just everything about it, the time that they give to every single superhero, every single human in this show is just nothing short of fantastic. So at the beginning of the season, we're, really just focusing on Mark. At first, he's like strength training, he's preparing, he's getting a lot stronger. He's doing all these little tests that Cecil is giving him, to become stronger, to become even more of the most powerful person on the planet. Because as you know, in season 2, a Viltrumite, I forgot her name, but she came warning him again because halfway through season 2, Viltrumites were taking Nolan, to be executed, and they're telling Mark, go back to Earth and get the humans ready for the arrival of the Viltrumite Empire and get ready for us to pretty much take over and destroy your planet. So Cecil is making Mark prepare for all this, and he's getting a lot stronger. He's like bench lifting cruise ships and, whatever it is, flying faster, all that. So all that was really cool to see. And the first 3 episodes premiered all at once, so I definitely binge watched those. And I really enjoyed all those first 3 episodes. There's a whole different theme throughout this season, mainly because of Oliver, Mark's half-brother, Nolan's son. He's half Thratsin, half Viltrumite. And because Mark was the one who took him from the Thratsin planet back to Earth, the Thratsins, they age differently. They age a lot faster, so it's been, a few months, and Oliver is already pretty much close to being a teenager. And also with Oliver coming to Earth and Mark being, his only real family, and obviously there's going to be Debbie that's involved. Debbie is really the one that's, tasked with raising Oliver, with, teaching him, taking care of him, making sure that, he's living the life that he needs to be and just really loving him. And we did a lot of that in this season because Debbie, there's this moral dilemma too for Debbie. He's aging so fast. He's not really her kid, but by the end of the season and, just in general, she's his mother. He barely remembers his real mom back on Thratsin. They do say during the season that Thratsins kind of have a different sort of memory. They remember everything, and even when he was an infant, he remembers his mom, but Debbie's the one raising him. She's the one taking care of him, loving him, like I said. So Debbie is his mother without a doubt, and Mark is without a doubt his full brother. Even if he is technically just his half-brother, they are full-on brothers. And in the 3rd episode is when we finally get to see, what Oliver is capable of. He's, like I said, he's just trying to grow up. Debbie's trying to make him just like a normal kid, go out, play sports, meet friends, live the life that a child should live at your age, even though his age is kind of, just relative. So at the end of the 3rd episode, we really get to see his strength and, how he thinks. He pretty much thinks like a Viltrumite in some sort of way, although he does go through kind of an arc by the end of the season. At first, he's just full-on Viltrumite. If these guys are bad, they're bad guys, hurting people, hurting the world, they need to die. And that's kind of the whole theme of this whole season, Not only Oliver learning, why can't we kill the bad guys, Why is it bad to murder bad people if they're the ones who are hurting, the human race and all these innocent people? And, of course, Mark is always going to be like, we don't murder people, that's not what we do. That's not what we believe in. But by the end of the season, that definitely changes because it's the same thing with the Batman thing. Batman explores this. A lot of other superhero, stories explore this moral compass of, should we kill these bad people, the bad guys? Should we just put them away? But if you don't kill them, 9 times out of 10, they're going to come back and just kill and destroy more people. So obviously life is precious, no matter who you are. So the dilemma that this causes, Debbie and Mark and all these things, Oliver learning by Mark and Debbie why it's so bad to murder these people. At the end of the day, Oliver's thinking isn't really necessarily wrong. And this season has a lot of good conversations, first episode to the last, well, not the last one, but the ones before that, because the last episode is just a full-on 30-minute, 35-minute, just straight battle, straight fight. One of the coolest fights I've ever seen. But there's a lot of character development in this, not only with Oliver and Mark and those themes of what I was talking about, but just with everybody in the Guardians of the Globe, with even Immortal. A lot of characters that we thought were dead last season kind of come back, which is kind of a negative, just for this show, comic books in general. You never really quite know if somebody is dead. And they bring back a lot of characters, which they push the story forward, which is another thing about that. They're not just bringing back these characters for no reason. A lot of these superheroes push the story forward, and they have a lot to do with infecting or affecting other characters in their development. Specifically Red Splode, who... I mean, if you've seen the show, this guy is fucking awesome. The character development and the character arc that Red Splode has had from the first season, being that arrogant prick, he's just he's cheating on Eve all the time, and he's just a douchebag, kind of full of himself. And by the end of this season, or, just in this season as general, he's slowed down, he's toned it down. He's learned to respect people, just respect the girls in general that are in his life. And, he's still funny, he's still witty, making those jokes, but he is such a better person, and I just love this character so much. And that's definitely what makes this show stand out to me, to I'm sure a lot of other people. What makes this show so great is the writing, the time. They give so much time to all the characters. A lot of people are saying, this is a filler episode, or, whatever it is. This was just a lot of talking, and when you get such great episodes like the season finale of season 1, or, the mid-season finale of last season, where it's just action. The show is obviously known for, the shock factor to some degree, the elements of the blood and the gore and all that violence that it has. So that is probably definitely one of the best parts of the show. It's awesome to see. It's awesome to feel that, tension. But they give so much time to these characters as well. So I don't necessarily think there's any filler episodes really until this episode 5, I believe, the one where they focus on the dragon. I forgot his name, but he's kind of, just a minor side character, from what we've seen so far. And that episode, basically, I do think is probably the worst episode in the series. Mark is he's going to fight these people at the prison, and, him and Eve create this business to where they're like on retainer for the prison. If something ever goes wrong, they call Eve, and then Mark comes and saves them, because they want to move out of Debbie's house and get their own apartment, because, spoiler alert, Eve and Mark finally get together. They finally consummate their relationship, and it's lovely to see, man. I love them as a couple. Adam Eve is so fucking sick. So yeah, just episode 5, I think is... I hate to say the word failure, because I think the show's writing is amazing. All the characters, the thought behind this show, even though it is, based on the comic, but just... the story, the complexity of the story is off the charts. So technically I do think it is a filler, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. Even Rudy and Monster Girl, their relationship, how Rudy's just trying to help her stop, because every time she transforms into the monster, she decreases her age. She ages backwards. And since season 2, I believe, he's just been trying to help her, but she doesn't want his help, and he's just doing whatever he can because he's so fucking smart, so he can pretty much create anything. And their whole dynamic is just so awesome. They give a lot of time to it. Shrinking Ray comes back. We thought she died in one of the earlier episodes of season 2, and she forms a relationship with Rex, and I like them as a couple too, man. They're awesome just because of how different Rex is now. And even just Eve and Mark, in the first few episodes, obviously they've had something since the beginning, since the first season when they were in high school together. They've had that sort of dynamic. And then last season, when we got Mark trapped on that other planet, and then the older Eve comes back, and all that stuff that happened, what she told him. We had plenty of time with Mark and Eve. Mark is also, he has a lot on his shoulders. He has a lot of pressure being the strongest person on the planet. Cecil, Donald, they all go to him when something goes wrong, no matter how big of a fight it is. And a lot of the times he fails. He doesn't save the people. He doesn't defeat the bad guy. He always ends up hurting someone, no matter who it is. And he also just has that inner dilemma within himself, like, am I wrong? I should have done something different. And he kind of vents that to Eve a lot of the times. And that kind of slowly starts to form, especially in this season, to where they just sort of start to connect in just a different sort of way. We even did an episode focused on Cecil in this season. There's flashbacks in the beginning and, all throughout the episode, what he's been through, the things that he's had to do, the decisions he's had to make, and how he's gotten to the power position that he's gotten to. I've definitely always been a fan of Cecil. Walton Goggins voices this character literally so perfectly. It's flawless. He was meant to play this role. I love it so much. And this episode, we did a lot of backstory, a lot of, not necessarily questions answered, but reasoning behind why Cecil does what he does and makes the decisions that he makes. He's been through a lot. He's made a lot of mistakes. He's costing people lives. In the flashback, we kind of understand that Cecil sort of used to have the same mindset that Mark has right now, is bad guys are bad guys. They should be in prison. We shouldn't reuse them or, believe that they deserve a second chance. So Cecil makes this mistake of doing that. Cecil brings back Darkwing in this season, kind of for redemption, to use him because he believes in second chances after what's happened in his bad story. And we also know that Cecil has been working with Sinclair to develop these superhuman, basically indestructible robots, to prepare for the Viltrumite, attack. And Mark absolutely hates this. He cannot stand it. He is so stubborn in thinking that they need to be in prison. There's no reason to bring back Darkwing and not only bring him back, but put him in the Guardians of the Globe. So about halfway through the season, he hates this. Cecil kind of, also puts this chip in Mark's brain because just as a default, but that's where the other complexity comes into this season, because for a second there, Mark is kind of becoming a little bit reminiscent to Nolan, his father. And Cecil, obviously being the man that he is, he's going to have some sort of backup plan. So putting this sound wave in Mark's brain, it kind of made sense in some sort of way, although, it's kind of a little bit deceptive in some sort of way as well. And a lot of the Guardians also don't like this decision when they find out. So the Guardians of the Globe disband, Immortal and Duplicate, they all kind of go their separate ways. And then Mark, Rudy, Monster Girl, Rex, they kind of separate. But with all that's happened in the world, you have to also understand where Cecil is coming from. And Mark was acting crazy in this episode. He was kind of going off the rails just a little bit. And then Cecil drops this line, which is so hard. He says, you can either be the good guys or you can be the guys who save the world. You can't be both. And that shit it's so true. It's so intricate to what this whole show is about. And evidently, I think Mark, by the end of this season, the last scene specifically, I think he starts to fully understand, kind of where Cecil is coming from. In episodes 6, 7, and 8, the last three, all straight bangers, dude. The last 3 episodes of this season are all 10 out of 10. Like, I'm not even lying. Episode 6, we get this new character, Powerplex, who's voiced by Aaron Paul, who just does a phenomenal job. I mean, a lot of people, I'm going to talk about the animation right now. Twitter, whatever it is, the internet, a lot of these people, specifically the ones who read the comic books, I've, kind of glimpsed the comic books a little bit. My brother has read all of them. He's fully knowledged. They complain about the animation of this season so much, saying it's trash. What the fuck is this? And there's all these people on the internet kind of recreating certain scenes from this season. And I don't really mind the animation. I can kind of see where people are coming from. The first few episodes of this season, there's a lot of, kind of like, it's not very fluid in a lot of the movements, and a lot of the fights. But the last 2 episodes specifically, obviously, is where all the money went for this animation, And I would rather have, characters like Powerplex voiced by Aaron Paul and keeping Steven Yeun, Sandra Oh as Debbie, J.K. Simmons, keeping all these high celebrities as these voice actors, because that's really what makes the show, in my opinion. Just having amazing acting to go with the writing. You can have better animation and, kind of no-name actors voicing these characters, or you can have decent and passable animation, which normal people like me who don't read the comics or who don't necessarily care all that much, as long as the story and the writing and all that is spectacular, which it is. And you can have all these amazing actors voice these characters and just make the show even that much better. But there is another thing too, where obviously this is an Amazon show, and Amazon obviously has a shitload of money. This show is extremely popular. I don't understand why they can't necessarily allocate more money to this show instead of having to, kind of spread it thin between the episodes, in a season. But the animators and the creative team behind this show, just in general, they have a deadline. Season 1 and season 2, I believe it took almost 2 years. And people weren't very happy about that, me included. It kind of takes away from, how the show makes you feel, and you don't really remember a lot, and you have to go back and watch the first season again. So Amazon wants to pump this out every year at least, which it should. And animating a show like this is really fucking hard. Like they have that episode in season 2 where they're explaining, even just if the character is covering his mouth and they don't have to animate the mouth, that saves an absurd amount of money and time. So the people that are talking about this, go fucking animate your own show. You don't necessarily know what you're talking about. It's just Twitter and all this hate, what the internet is nowadays. But I'm gonna love this show no matter what. I don't care if this show is pixelated like crazy. I'm going to love it no matter what. But back to the last 3 episodes. Powerplets, voiced by Aaron Paul. Such a great episode. We're still going back to the effects that the Nolan and Mark fight at the season 1 finale had, to where these cities being destroyed and all these superheroes, much like, even Avengers Age of Ultron, just all this destruction that superheroes cause, there's always going to be these people who are affected. Several hundreds, thousands of people who are affected by this. And Powerplets, his sister and niece, were in one of the buildings that were destroyed in Chicago, and he's just been trying to get revenge ever since. So this whole episode is based on his revenge. And this episode just also furthers the exploration of, why villains become villains. I believe in episode 3 or 4, one of those, we get an opening scene, a 10-minute montage with no dialogue of these 2 superheroes. Well, not superheroes, they have powers. They are technically villains because, they try to rob a bank, but no dialogue, and everything from this montage, every scene, it tells a story, and you understand it, and you start to feel for these characters and why they're forced to do the things that they have to do. They get evicted from their apartment. They have no money. Nobody wants to really hire them. They did a job, but they get fired immediately because of their powers. And they're forced to go and try and rob this bank once again. And then Powerplets, he lost his niece and his sister. He's forced to become a villain with his powers. He wants to get revenge. And just that feeling of loneliness and contempt, like it can definitely take over a person, especially when they've dealt with so much loss and grief. But that definitely doesn't go well for Powerplets. The end of this episode is just fucking crazy. And then Mark, of course, the person that he is, he's also feeling like it's his fault. And he's feeling like he could have done something better. And even if it's not necessarily his fault, indirectly, it kind of is because of his fight with Nolan and just being the fact that he is a superhero, one of the most powerful. And then we get Invincible War in episode 7. From what I know, from my brother told me, there's a lot to do with this. There's a lot of material to cover. They do it in one episode. I wouldn't know, but this episode was fucking amazing as well. 15, 16 Invincibles taking over the world, trying to kill our Invincible. And this specific episode also just further shows how great Steven Yeun is as this character. He's having the task of voicing 17 different versions of Invincible, and yet each one that we see is different in some sort of way. And Steven Yeun is definitely, without a doubt, better than ever, specifically in this season and this episode. They just absolutely fuck up the entire Earth, and then at the end of the episode, at the worst fucking possible time, we get Conquest. Another character that we get returning in this episode is Ainstrom Levy. We thought he was dead last season, Invincible just obliterated his face. They don't show him, which is another thing to maybe he wasn't dead, and he wasn't. At the last second, He, opens up a portal and he gets dragged into this other universe by these robots. He had a backup plan to where if this were to ever happen, he has a deal with this other, I don't know if they're a race, but they seem like robots. They're able to, bring him back to life. They're able to put him back together. And he's the one that forms all these Invincibles from all these different universes to get back at Mark. And Angstrom Levy returning, not being dead, obviously just makes Mark feel even more guilty, feel like everything is more his fault, and hammering home the theme of this pretty much whole season, like I was saying, should the bad guys die? Should they go to prison? Do they deserve to live? Should we kill them if it means that it can save hundreds, thousands of lives? And this is kind of the start to what makes Mark think maybe these people should die, because Angstrom Levy comes back with all these Invincibles. They kill thousands and thousands of people. Maybe he should die. Maybe he should have been glad that he was dead instead of feeling guilty about it. Because at the end of the day, if these villains died, if Angstrom Levy would have actually been killed, which, there's nothing Mark can really do about that because he did fuck him up to a pulp. But at the last second, the portal opened up, whatever. But you shouldn't feel guilty about that, If you would have actually killed this guy and he, would have never known about anything else, it would have saved thousands of lives. And that's what Mark needs to think about at the end of the day. And that's kind of the conclusion that he comes to at the end of this season. And because I love this show so much, I've looked on the internet, I've researched it, all that. I've heard about Conquest for a while. My brothers told me that this guy is the real deal. This is the second strongest Viltrumite behind Thrad, who I don't know if it's been mentioned. We haven't seen him at all, really, from what I can remember. But this dude is fucking huge. He lost his arm in a battle with another alien species. He lost his eye as well. And so he's the one who comes to Earth at the worst possible time and says,
"Stand ready for my arrival, worm."
And another great decision from the show, which I was talking about earlier, they get Jeffrey Dean Morgan to voice him, which is once again perfect casting. His deep voice, his maniacal tone, his menacing presence is just so perfect for a character of Viltrumite as strong as this guy, because this fight between him and Invincible, it's no joke. It's like a 35 minute straight fight with just them two. Oliver, comes in sort of a little bit. They're fucking up the Earth buildings. They go across oceans. There's a good parallel to where he's on a beach. He's dragging Invincible's head through this beach, through this city, which obviously parallels the end of season 1 when he's going through the train, when Omni-Man has him through the train, just absolutely obliterating all these people. And this fight, dude, I was watching this and I was just, so many emotions were going through me. It was easily one of the best episodes of television I've ever watched. It lived up to the hype. I've kind of read some of the comic book panels, and it's very true to that. A lot of the show is very true to the comic books. And throughout this whole episode, Conquest is kind of just talking shit. He's like, I need you to be stronger. I want to fight. Like, this dude lives for the fight. He is the second strongest Viltrumite. He's old. And as you know, Viltrumites get stronger with age. So I don't know how old Conquest is, but he has to be hundreds and hundreds of years old. So this dude just lives for the fight. He lives for the blood, for the violence. And there's a scene where we kind of get a glimpse into how he kind of truly feels, He kind of starts whispering in Mark's ear, I'm so lonely. The Viltrumites fear me. The more planets and races that I fucking conquer, they start to fear me more. He's like, I don't even get a name. I just get a purpose, which is such a hard line. Once again, this show is constantly dropping such fucking hard lines. And then he says, take it to your grave, and they continue to fight. Adam Eve comes in, she got fucked up in the last episode by one of the Invincibles. She gets her leg, just snapped, but she can rearrange matter and all this. And obviously she loves Mark, so she goes after him. And at first, she's kind of doing damage to, Conquest. She's like thinning the air out to where he can't really fly as fast. He's basically stuck. She's doing all this stuff. She gets her shield on her. She's kicking ass for a little bit, but Conquest is just on another level. She gets tired. She gets fucked up, dude. She gets punched in the face. Her whole face is all disfigured, and then he just deals the last blow. puts his arm through her abdomen, tearing her guts out. And this is when the real spark in Mark occurs. You know, Oliver comes to help him fight, but he gets saved by Cecil. He gets transferred back, you know, to the Pentagon or whatever it is. But seeing Adam Eve essentially die, this just ignites something inside of him, and he fucks up Conquest, dude. But he doesn't necessarily do it alone. If you've seen the Adam Eve special, you know that she can kind of go a little bit Jean Grey. She can kind of, if something really, really tragic happens in her life, she kind of explains. She can rearrange her body parts, her molecular, her DNA, you know, all that stuff, if it's necessary, because they put a block on her when she was a child. But this is tragic. You know, she's dying. She needs to save Mark. And she goes Super Saiyan, essentially. And then it's just game over. Mark loves Eve so much. He fucks up Conquest, just headbutting him over and over again. This shit was fucking crazy. But I will say, I was kind of hoping for Alan and Omni-Man to come back during this episode. You know, after reading the comic books and the comic book panels, I know that's not what happens. So I was hoping for at least, you know, they always have, you know, the end credits scene, the post credits. I was hoping to at least show them and what they're up to, because we haven't seen them probably since episode 4 or 5. And I want to see what they're doing. You know, they're in space. Alan is obviously super strong, but they're going to come into play in the 4th season, obviously. They're going to be a huge part of it, I would imagine. But we did other teases, you know, back to Dark Blood and how, you know, maybe Invincible is going to have to fight the devil next season and all these other subplots. So yeah, I think I said most of what I wanted about this season. You know, I left out a couple things just because, you know, this video would be way too long. I could talk about this show forever because of how awesome it is. And if you're not watching this show, you're definitely missing out, especially if you're a comic book fan, just in general. The writing, the character development, everything about this show, the time that they take, it's just incredible. So go watch the show right now if you haven't already. I don't know what else I need to say to convince you to watch it. But yeah, as always, I appreciate you guys watching. My name is Zach. Like, subscribe, comment. Tell me your favorite Invincible episode, or if this season disappointed you, which I doubt it did. Tell me your favorite season. But my name is Zach, and I will see you on the next one.